Thanks, Roland here. Call to order of the Port of Newport regular monthly commission meeting at 6:01. I'd like to start the agenda off with the introduction and swearing in of our new commissioner, Jim Burke. Aaron, prior to that though, I believe we need to formally vote, as well as, do we need to swear you in or not swear you in, but resolve to appoint you as the clerk?
You can do it by motion, and a vote will suffice to that.
And that's a motion as a clerk of the board. Clerk of the board.
Yep.
So I need to hear, in order for us to proceed with the swearing in of Jim and a vote for that, or a vote and then subsequently swearing in, I'll need a motion to appoint Aaron as the clerk of the board so he can proceed with that swearing in.
I move that we appoint Aaron Brentz as clerk of the board for the Port of Newport.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. Aaron, you are now our clerk of the board.
All right.
At this point, Walter brought up a good point that I believe we need to formally vote on the approval of appointing Jim Burke to a one-year commission seat on the Port of Newport Board, Board of Commissioners for position number 5. So at this point, I'll hear a motion to appoint Jim Burke to position number 5 for a one-year unexpired term that expires on 30 June 2019.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any other comments? All right. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Jim, thank you. And Aaron, will you proceed with the swearing in?
And raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I, James Burke.
I, James Burke.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
That I will honestly and faithfully.
That I will honestly and faithfully.
Discharge the duties of the office to which I have been appointed.
Discharge the duties of the office to which I have been appointed.
And that I will support the laws and Constitution of the State of Oregon.
I will support the laws of the Constitution of the State of Oregon.
And the United States of America to the best of my ability.
And the United States of America to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
And we'll give you the official copy right after.
What are my papers?
Excellent. Thank you, Aaron. And Jim, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
I think I speak for everyone when I say we're very glad to have you as part of the group.
Appreciate that.
All right. Well, let's keep moving into the next order of business here, which is a series of resolutions that deal with the budget. The agenda, as it was posted, required some slight modifications. I'd like to move the public comment for those that are interested in making a public comment prior to us hearing motions and resolutions on setting fees and rates. Anyone will have an opportunity to speak to that now. I think we do have one comment on that. So,
David Jenks.
Now's the time?
now is the time.
That's excellent. Thank you. I'm David Jenks, Newport resident. I was going to touch on a few things in the budget itself, the budget resolution, but I'm going to save that because honestly, we're going to end up doing a supplemental budget anyway. Because some of the rates and fees will be adjusted here in the future, hopefully from the commercial fishing users group as they go through sections 1, 2, and 3. The part I wanted to talk about was on the employees' compensation plan. There's some confusing parts in that. The changes that were made from what was originally there. The original plan that was developed was an incentive-based plan where there was a review of employees yearly at different dates and based on incentive and job performance. and if you met your performance ratings, and then you were, your pay was increased by 2.5% a year. And the way it came out at 2.5% a year was that we've gone back and done a 10-year average on the CPI, and on a 10-year average, I believe the CPI was like 1.96% or something. And so instead of saying 2% or something like that, we felt if it was going to be an incentive program, we needed to have something there as an incentive for the employees. So we made it 2.5%. Well, now I see that the changes into this year's budget on the resolution is that it's been changed to going back to calling it a COLA, cost of living adjustment, which, it's not always a good thing because that goes up and down. So you don't know, budgeting, or you don't know if your employees, what you're going to get from one year to the next as the CPI goes up and down. So the biggest change I see is that now it's at a 2% increase instead of a 2.5. So I think that in adopting this resolution, you're losing your incentive plan, you're losing your incentive to your employees, because you're cutting their wages. I mean, I know that our wages were low in the low bracket, and so I believe that we've been compensating for that and raising them up. But to go with a 2% COLA over a 2.5% incentive program, I don't think that's right. I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that I think that your employees, they see that in the personnel manual. I don't think they're going to be too pleased with it. Who knows? Anyway, that's all I got.
Okay, thanks. Were there any other comments or requests for personal comments?
I've got two gentlemen just come in. Making sure they sign in.
Yeah, you're welcome to sign in if you choose there in the back. Okay, proceeding through the public comment section on the budgets, we have a series of resolutions in front of us. I do?
Yeah.
Well, that's why I have a secretary treasurer next to me here. So I have to formally open the budget hearing, is what you're saying? All righty. Then I guess I better do that. At this point, I will open the fiscal year 2018-19 budget hearing pursuant with ORS 294.430. It is open. At this point, help me out here. I assume
Mark
that
will be
I...
presenting stuff for our staff.
Okay.
Yeah, so with the budget hearing, this is where we would take public comment.
Which we just did.
Regarding the budget.
Yeah.
That's fine. And then,
Budget hearing, you have a little form.
It was part of our process. We have diverted from that process. I think given the ramifications of this, I would say, Mark, why don't you present, and then I'll have an opportunity for public comment after that.
so with the budget hearing, we published the required LD1 form for Oregon budget law. A copy of it is in the budget packet. This LD1 form is basically in the far right-hand column is the approved budget from the last budget committee meeting, and that's what the hearing is on those numbers. With the budget hearing after public comment, the commission take those comments into consideration and then move on to resolution related to the agenda. And that is the purpose of the budget hearing.
So you have those three resolutions, after some discussion amongst yourselves, would be the ones that you would consider adopting. 1, 2, and 3 there.
So at this point, then, we've all had a chance to review each of these over the last month or so. We've had a number of meetings. I'd like to, if the commission has any comments that they'd like to make on this at this point, before we open this up to public comment. Jeff?
So are we commenting on all three resolutions at this point? Or are we going one by one?
I think we can go take them collectively as a whole. So if you have comments on any of these three, now would be the time to voice them.
Okay. On the second resolution, I'd just like to declare a actual conflict of interest. As my father-in-law owns 2 commercial fishing vessels that are subject to rates and fees. So I won't be participating in the discussion or the vote on the second resolution.
Thank you.
So if we could,
I'll separate.
yeah. As far as the first resolution, I would recommend that we not include the COLA. And it would be simply, if you look at last year's resolution adopting a compensation plan, it basically just says the port shall not issue a COLA for fiscal year, as opposed to the port shall issue. So there's just one word adding a not in there. It makes it exactly the same as in previous budgets when COLA has not been used. So I thought I'd throw that out there and recommend that we do that. And on the third resolution...
Just hang on a second. So Mark, if we were to make a modification to that, would that affect the LB submission?
If there is a change to the funds, or a fund's expenditures, in this case the general operating fund and the NOAA fund, that is greater than $5,000 or 10% of that fund's total expenditures, at that point there doesn't need to be another hearing or a modification. If it's greater than that $5,000 or 10%, then we would have to do another hearing and modify the LD forms. The budget in the LD forms for personnel services right now includes a 2% COLA increase scheduled for January, plus a 2% step merit increase. That's where those numbers, that's how those numbers were calculated. So if that COLA was removed, we could still approve the budget. It just wouldn't be paid.
But we would have an opportunity to modify that at a later date.
Exactly.
So Jeff's comments and concerns, or his comment about this, we could entertain that if we felt that was necessary, still maintain the submission of the LB form on schedule.
Correct.
Modify the wording in this as he suggested and revisit it at a future time if the commission determines it's necessary to work on a supplemental budget.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
At this meeting, if you don't pass the resolution making appropriations, you would be appropriating the funds that would include both of those, the COLA increase plus the 2% possible merit increase. Of course, you don't have to expend those funds, and they can be adjusted in a supplemental.
So in approving these resolutions, we could make that suggestion. You guys would capture it, and we would still move it forward.
Right.
Okay.
The intent of my comment was in line with basically what Mr. Jinks was saying about maintaining a merit-based incentive program for employee raises, as has been done in the past.
So the way it was set up here was that was to take effect. The COLA increase is in addition to the merit increases, and it was. I think it was the intent to try and keep it up with the rate of inflation, basically, so that it stayed in adjustment. I think that's what the intent was behind it. So it was an additional increase because it takes effect on January 1st, 2019.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jim, did you have?
Oh, I was going to say, I agree that merit raises are a more valuable tool than just a standard COLA, but in this case, trying to merit raise is still there. And a COLA trying to bump up the staff from where to play a little catch up if it can be budgeted. It's probably not that bad as long as the merit raise is still based on, employee review.
So it's a combination of
It's a combination of both, chance of, helping people out a little bit, but they still have to earn their other merit raise.
That's correct.
And that's not a given from year to year, that's to be, evaluated each year depending on the state of the budget, the state of the funds. But that's kind of my 2 cents. Does that make sense? Like what I'm saying?
Sarah, thoughts?
So the 2%, does this get paid out a couple times a year? What you're saying, you get 2% and then the 2.5% for the merit raise from before, or that I don't understand.
It would be a 2% cost of living adjustment in January with a possibility of another 2% merit increase. Both of those have been budgeted into the personnel services numbers.
So you're
Not
adding
given.
the COLA
Possibly.
and taking a 0.5% off of the merit incentive.
So you could get a 2 or you could get a 4 or somewhere in between.
But you're not getting any less than a 2,
Yeah.
That's
according to this.
according to this.
Whereas in the past, the incentive program, career review was just 2.5% was the max. That seems like a better deal to have an extra 2% to merit up.
Walter, do you have any thoughts?
I think that if we're going to be doing a supplemental budget and this doesn't start until January, I think we could probably move on, but I would defer to, if there's consensus that we need to take that call off the run for that. I'd be fine with that also.
So, I'll throw it out to a public comment.
Okay, so I didn't catch the part that the COLA was at 2% and there was still the incentive of 2%, which was dropped down from 2.5. But if the 2% that's the COLA, is that just a wage catch-up, then why are we calling it COLA? Cost of living adjustment, and when you're looking at CPI, it's based on several things. If you look at the CPI, it's based on, 30% of the CPI is medical costs. The port pays medical. So in most areas, when we went to research this, we found that ports did not, the ports that didn't pay medical, their adjustments were higher than what we were adjusting because we were paying medical. And so when you start talking COLAs and CPIs, you have to be careful about what you're doing. Because you have to take more into account than just say, it's a cost of living adjustment. You have to look at everything that goes into it. So, the word COLA kind of misspells a lot of things into your document. Where it's a catch-up pay rate to get you to where you're accountable to, say, with other ports or other job descriptions, then that's what I would call it. But I'm fine with the way it is because I want employees to get the most they can and get up to where they're even with everybody else. But after that point, you keep paying COLAs, and it doesn't make much sense then. So that's just my 2 bits.
We'll keep this going.
Yeah, I'd like to concur. I think that, in several independent reviews, you've found that your employees are on the low side of being paid. And, you do cover employee medical benefits, but you don't cover family benefits, which are extremely expensive. And I think in order to keep good employees, you need to pay them better. And, depending on what you want to call it, David's trying to keep it straight legally on what things have to be based on, but I would not be in favor of, removing a 2% catch-up, cost of living, whatever you want to call it. But I also agree that the incentive needs to be there in order for them to work a little harder, for the manager to have, some more leverage to move people up and to reward people for work. So it can't be just a straight across the board pay increase. It's got to be something that rewards them for their hard work. So the two combined until you can kind of get on the same level of what other ports are paying for similar job descriptions, I think is probably a good way to do it. I'm fully in favor of paying employees better because you need to keep them, and it's not cheap to live here.
Thanks for that, both of you guys.
So just one quick thing.
Careful now.
I know, I'm pushing it.
Yeah.
It's such a good job. It felt like you. So when you're paying out the 2%, is that, and so when do you know you're caught up, and when do you know that you go to the incentive-based program? So it gets a little tricky. And I haven't seen yet to where, and then if you go into the salaried employees, does this COLA also go into the salaried employees? Because if you got an employee that's getting $80,000 a year, you got an employee that's getting $30,000 a year, if you look at that 2% COLA, what it does to this guy here and this guy here, that's where the unfairness of COLAs come out. And so in your resolution, does it state in there who gets the COLA? Or is it just across the board?
Unless it's 2%.
It's just across
the board.
Yeah. So that's the problem with COLAs, is when you go across the board like that, you get disgruntled employees because one guy's down here in the dirt working hard, this guy's sitting here, and he's getting.
Sure.
So that's what we faced last time with COLAs.
Fair enough. All right. Jeff.
I wouldn't, I didn't want to suggest that we take away something that's budgeted. My thought was if everything's incentive, it gives the general manager the flexibility to do what he thinks he needs. But in the aggregate, it would not be a loss, is the way I was thinking of it. But I'm flexible either way. I just want to give the future general manager as much flexibility as he thinks he needs to with his employees and how he structures pay increases. But
Well, it sounds like there's some degree of consensus here that.
So that would be just like we
a wage
get rid of
increase.
the COLA and just do a 4% incentive?
Well, I think we're getting hung up a little bit on the name here. I think COLAs imply, as David's mentioned, something different than what I think the intent of what this was. In some ways, it was almost as we said, a wage adjustment, not necessarily a cost of living adjustment in the formal sense.
Right.
But yeah.
Ketchup, mustard, let's ketchup.
But we, right now, I think what's in front of us is a resolution that encompasses essentially two types of available increases. One is more automatic, and one is at the discretion of the GM. And I think that seems like it fits in line with what the commission is thinking. It's budgeted for, and I think we should move to the next resolution and keep going. Again, we'll collectively vote on these things or pass these resolutions individually, but I think I'd like to move to the next one, unless there's...
I was just gonna, since Jeff isn't going to be able to talk on the second one, should we just pass them one at a time, and then that way we don't have any...
Well, he can, I think you can speak to it, you just can't vote on it.
no, I can't speak to it.
You can't speak to it, alright. So, fair enough. I don't have a preference. I was going to do them all at the end, but if you guys would like to do them one at a time, that's fine with me. One at a time, right now?
Sure.
Alrighty. So, Aaron, help me out here. Do I simply ask for a motion to approve the resolution 2018-06?
Yep, adopting a compensation plan for employees.
Alright, then I will ask for a motion to accept resolution number 218-06, the resolution adopting a compensation plan for port employees, as written here.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of adoption of this resolution 218-06 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Resolution is passed. We'll move on to the next one. The next resolution is the resolution setting rates and fees. We've had a fair amount of discussion about this. Actually, I'm sorry, Mark or Aaron, why don't you guys, I think the main thing I'd like you to reiterate to everybody here is where this is finally landed so that everybody's clear as to what the increases that we see here are.
We had a lot of discussion with the commercial special user group at the last meeting, and what ended up here was based off of those recommendations. But we understand that we're going to go back and review sections 1, 2, and 3 with them to do some more work on fine tuning it later on in the year. But these were based on increases that were made last year from the previous year. So that was the recommendation that came from that user group, and then ultimately what ended with these fees right here. So we still have more work to do, I think, with the user group.
I think we had commissioners commenting on a similar kind of increase as well. So, but yeah, sounds fine. And I think we asked you guys to go back to the user group to get this input. So
Right.
I think that's still. I'm glad to see that that's continuing. We'll continue to get that input, and if we need to make modifications after those discussions, then we'll do it. Did you have anything else on this?
No.
So again, the rate increases that we see here are identical to what we had in 2017 or 2018 fiscal year.
That's right.
Correct. Okay. Is there any more discussion on the board about this resolution? Anybody?
No, I mean, the user group is aware that they have an opportunity to weigh in and change.
Mm-hmm. Make those recommendations.
And so I think they formed a committee to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So there'll be time in getting back to us.
Mm-hmm.
So I have no issues.
All right. Jim, anything? Walter?
No.
All right. Then I think at this point we will continue our accepting or our voting on these resolutions. I will need a
Stuart,
yes.
public comment on the resolution.
Yes, I guess we are. Fair enough.
I would like to express my once again displeasure with the Section 3 international terminal charges not being increased. I think that is a huge mistake on your part. I think you're getting behind, and I think that, you know, if and when a cargo shipper or somebody comes around here and starts knocking on your door, these are going to be posted on your website, then you're not going to be in any kind of position to catch up. And I think that, you know, a simple, you know, it's not going to make a big difference in your budget because you don't have any shipping going on right now, but it could make a difference in your negotiations going forward with a potential shipper or a potential other user, whether it's a, you know, a research vessel or whatever. And I think that those need to probably go across the board similar to what the fishing fleet is paying, you know, a 3 to 5% increase. Just keep your rates up because these rates go back to 2011 is when they were created, and there's been no increases since 2011. And I think it is irresponsible for the port not to address that and keep its rates and fees in line with what other ports are charging, because down the road you're going to be sorry you didn't. And it's not been addressed. I've made that comment before, and I firmly believe that those numbers need to be kept up.
Thank you for that.
And that is in Section 3, which the user group will be looking at.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't have the expertise that you would on these, so.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not dealing with, you know, 650-foot ships. And like I said, you know, that
As I understood it, Doug had looked into that a little bit.
the tariffs and everything about, you know, the cargoes that are handled, the length of the berthing for the ship, everything has increased and things are busy. And like I said, these rates and fees were based extensively on a very expensive study that the port had done and brought in a specialist to create these fees in 2011. And, you know, and it's irresponsible for the port not to keep those current. And what you're going to end up doing down the road is you're going to try to negotiate with somebody like Hampton here when he brings his lumber in. At the same time, you're going to be trying to increase your rates, and you're going to be panicking going back to trying to find a specialist to find your rates, just like you are now. You're trying to scramble and figure out what a rate should be. And you already know what a rate should be, keep it in line with the other ports, and then there's no problem going forward when you're negotiating. And seeing zeros across that board is disturbing.
Fair enough. I think we'll have that opportunity before we promulgate a new version of these, if the commission feels that we need to make those adjustments after input from others. So appreciate the comment. All right.
And we can adjust our rates at any time. That's one thing.
What's our timeline to hear back from the fisheries user group? Do we have a hard date or a rough date?
I think within a couple of months.
Okay.
At the top, probably next month. They were still trying to figure out, there'd been some, was there a user group, wasn't there, back and forth, and so we just had a brief discussion at one of the meetings about, we started out once every 2 months because we didn't want anyone to get burned out. And we kind of left it that it would be to the discretion of the commission. Like if we needed this, we could ask them to convene a meeting. And vice versa, if they have something out there that they're like, we need to talk to the commission about this, they can approach us. So I think that's where we left it, is that if we need this sooner, we need to let them know that.
Well, but I think to Jim's point, we probably need to put a bookend on this.
Yeah.
A bit.
I think we should address it. I mean, I agree. We should address it sooner rather than later.
So I would say the user group meets monthly.
Like, it's in
Could
here.
it be, yeah.
Yeah, it could meet monthly, and
So I would say before the end of July, we should have
Okay.
some feedback.
that's what they were looking for, so
Okay.
from commissions.
If that seems reasonable to everybody.
Sure.
I go, that's
So
what
if you
Sharon
could pass that
said,
along.
Who is the chair?
Heather, man.
And that gives us an opportunity, like I said, for reviewing any of the other rates or looking for any other feedback or reaching out to anybody that we need to modify any of the other rates.
I'll let Heather know right away so they can start thinking.
All right. So at this point, we will still need a resolution or to approve the resolution as it's written here.
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 2018-07 setting rates, fees, and charges.
Second.
All right. Any other discussion on the commission? All right. At this point, we'll have a vote. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstention? Noted. All right. Motion passes. All right. We'll move into the final resolution that I see here. Mark, can you give us a little background on it?
This resolution, 2018-09, is a resolution adopting the budget, making appropriations, levying, and categorizing the tax. And I believe we'll want to close the public hearing on the budget before we adopt this resolution.
Okay.
So we will be adopting the budget at that point.
All right. Do I need to have anything other than at this point, I don't need any other input or public comments at this point that you know. Okay. So I will at 6:33 close the budget hearings. All right.
We adjourn the normal meeting.
And at 6:34, I will adjourn or open up the regular Port of Newport regular monthly commission meeting again. All right. So now, please.
Yeah, so this resolution, section 1 is adopting the budget that was approved by the budget committee meeting at the second budget committee meeting in the amount of $15,937,348. Section 2 makes appropriations by budget object classification by fund. This gives the authority to spend those funds in the next fiscal year. Section 3 imposes the tax. We have both a permanent tax rate that property tax revenue we get from that can be used for general operating purposes, and then we also impose a fixed amount, and that's the $520,000, and that's used to pay the debt service on the general obligation bond in the debt service fund. And section 4 just categorizes the taxes, whether they're subject to certain limitations or not, but the rates are the same. Those are the 4 parts of that resolution.
All right. Do you have any other comments about it at this point before I have the commission weigh in on it?
The numbers that you're appropriating are taken right from the LD forms. The budget is close approved. Or any changes.
Okay. Any of the commissioners have any comments at this point on the budget?
I do not.
Derek? Mark, could you just make a brief statement about what a supplementary budget process could look like if the commission decides to pursue that?
Sure. A supplemental budget can be done after the budget is adopted, so it has to be post-adoption and after the next fiscal year has started, so it can't take place in the next 5 days, so to speak. The method that's used to adopt the supplemental budget pull up my notes here. Give me a second here.
Yeah. I didn't mean to put you on the spot too much
I
here.
have here, just need to find it. So if we are going, in the supplemental budget, if we change a fund's, an individual fund's appropriations by less than 10%, then the supplemental budget can be enacted through a resolution adopted by the board. There doesn't have to be a hearing for that. If we change a fund's expenditures or appropriation greater than the 10% of the total fund, then we have to have another public hearing and adopt the budget through a supplemental budget through a resolution at that point. So those are the two paths, depending on the amount of change. So we're going to do that supplemental budget.
And that's by budget item, not necessarily a 10% aggregate on the total 15.9.
It is. It's 10% of a total funds expenditure. So if you're looking at this resolution in front of you, and you are look at the general operating fund, and you can see that the subtotal doesn't include the unappropriated ending fund balance, but the subtotal of $5,609,747. We modified those numbers greater than 10% of that figure, then we have to have another public hearing
I see.
and adopt a supplemental budget through a resolution. If it's less than 10%, then it's just a resolution that's adopted at a regular commission meeting.
So you're saying that these categories, like 10% of general operating, 10% of construction, 10% in the release?
It's by fund, right, not by individual category.
And moving monies within the fund would that, presuming it's, I mean, how would that affect? When would you need a motion to work within a fund to move monies?
So if you can do a resolution transfer, but there you would have to decrease one object classification. Let's say you moved funds from personnel services to materials and services. The net change would be zero. We'd be decreasing one category, increase another. Total fund expenditures or appropriations would be the same.
Okay, so that would require.
Yeah, but you're not
Okay.
adding or taking away from the budget here to move things around.
So anything over that 10%, would we have to go through the whole budget committee thing?
It's not the budget committee, it would just be a public hearing. It has to be published in the paper, public comment, and then adoption by the commission.
Okay. Anybody have any other thoughts or questions at this point? Okay. Before I hear a motion on this, I also wanted to thank the port staff again for this. I know it's been an interesting process for everybody. I appreciate all the work that's gone into it. I think everybody here does. And so, again, thank you guys.
Hope you're not sick of pizza.
What's that?
Hope you're not sick of pizza.
Maybe a little.
That being said, I suppose I'll need a motion to accept the resolution 218-09, the budget as written here. Do I have a motion?
I move that we adopt the resolution 2018-09, adopting the 2018-19 fiscal year budget, making appropriations and levying and categorizing the tax.
I'll second.
Any other comments? No. All right. All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, resolution passes. Thank you guys again. All right. We will move into the next section on our agenda, which is commissioner changes to the agenda. I have a couple of them. Before I jump into it, anybody have anything else? I'd just like to capture in our agenda that we add a section here to talk about a path forward for, or plans for, recommended plans for moving forward with an interim and a permanent GM search. I'd also like to add the update from Aaron regarding the status of the squid offloading at the international terminal.
Is that under new business?
That'll be both those will be under new business.
Okay.
Anybody else? No. All right. I will move into the next agenda item, public comment. Since we're at the beginning of the meeting, anyone have wish to speak? You don't need to have your name written down. All right. Nothing heard. We'll move on to the next agenda item. This is the consent calendar. We have those items listed here. The minutes, financial reports. Thanks for including those. Special use permits, Barrel to Keg, Wrigley Vineyards wine tasting, Oregon Sea Grant shop at the dock, contracts, hoist dock electrical upgrades. Been talking about those for a little bit. Lighting replacement, South Beach, surplus property declaration. There's a number of things on there. Does anybody have any comments on the consent calendar before we move forward? Yes, sir.
I guess I could have read it more thoroughly, but I knew someone would answer it. Aaron. Is this lighting thing, is that like a green initiative, something that will save us money, something that's more efficient?
Yes, it's going to be about a 70% return on investment is what it's projected at. There's numbers in your meeting packet on exactly what it's projected to save us as well. It's a rebate system, so we are, as soon as I find it here, I'll tell you. We're responsible for a down payment on it, and then once they deliver the supplies, we pay the balance. After the installation, we submit some paperwork to PUD, and then we get a refund. Is the way it works. So out of pocket to the port at the end of all that, it's right around $6,000.
Right. And so they're longer lasting and better and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, they're not going to be, they're LED lights, they have a different tint to them, it has that nicer kind of white light at nighttime, brighter and much.
So it's like all the lights around? Or?
It's everything except for the main lot down where, for all the boat parking, where the boat ramp is. Right. So everything else that you see here, basically is going to get replaced.
Cool. That was my only question.
Any other comments on any of the consent calendar items? Aaron, I guess one quick one on the Wrigley Vineyards wine tasting. Have we ever done anything that you guys know of like that here before?
We talked about that a bit. Obviously, my time is about a year before, so the road does beer sales, but they're of course the tenant, and so I didn't have any. I hadn't heard of any other time we've done like a wine tasting event or anything like that, but they do have a liquor license. So.
Do you see any concerns with that?
Rowdiness of people will be about the only thing, but we'll have security on staff for that, and we can always express to the vendor, need to make sure.
It's a 3-hour.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
There's no stipulation that this is like a kid-friendly place. The activities, it's just.
Yeah, I don't.
Can pay the money and have an activity.
I say that concern only because the question is, do we have any concerns? But I don't have any reason to believe that it's going to get out of hand or anything like that.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay. I think I need a motion to approve the consent calendar as it's here. I'll make a motion. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead, sir.
I make a motion to accept the consent calendar as it's written.
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Move on. Old business. Items previously removed from the consent calendar? None. All right. We're into new business. Commercial Fishers User Group Standing Committee. Appoint members.
So this was one I was not involved with this agenda item, and so when I saw it on there this afternoon, what it is positions 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11. are coming up to be, they're ending their terms, they need to be reappointed. But I haven't talked to those folks about their desire to continue on. I also haven't heard anybody say they wanted to leave. So I don't know if there was any work. I had recommended that we contact those folks and say, hey, your term's coming due, and put this before the commission. But what I think is probably best is give me an opportunity to contact all those people myself and touch base with them, make sure they still want to be on the committee, and then we just put it back before the commission. I think it's going to be fine. That'd be my recommendation.
Sounds good. Yeah.
That sounds good.
And Jim, just so you're aware, Sarah's our liaison to the Fishermen's User Group. Not that you're not welcome to be a part of that or participate. Short of we can't have more than 2 commissioners in one place at one time.
Sure.
But I'll appoint, at least for the next 30 days maybe, I'll appoint folks if we need to those committees, and then they'll report back. So Sarah's been doing that for us. But just so you know. Okay. All right. There's no other new business other than the 2 items I added. Aaron, why don't you give us a brief update on the letter that or the information you just provided to us tonight?
So I added this letter here. Doug signed this. This was to a squid buyer out of California. It's fairly well self-explanatory. The only thing I had to add to this is that this afternoon they called about 4 o'clock and said basically the squid fisheries fell flat in the area, and they're going to be able to pick up their stuff this weekend, so they're heading back down. So no squid coming in this year on our facilities.
Okay. And there's no other implications to the port. We didn't invest anything per se.
No, there's they agreed to a $1,500 setup fee and a $1,500 teardown fee. So we're going to charge that to them, and then forklift and anything else that Don does to assist them in loading their gear. But that's it.
Okay. Anybody have any thoughts, questions on that? All right. Thanks for that update. I'm going to jump into it. I mentioned that I wanted to speak a bit to a suggestion to the commission tonight about a path forward based on the results of our vote and our decision yesterday, that we are going to be in a position of looking to fill an interim GM position as well as begin the search for a permanent GM. I'd like to throw out the idea that we engage the SDAO folks to help us with both of those activities. We could have them present, the way I would understand this is that the SDAO folks would come and visit with us, present a proposal about how they would move forward on a permanent GM search. They would also be in a position, as they've done for other public agencies who have vacancies in senior management positions, to provide us with a list of names that they have vetted that they feel would be appropriate to work in an interim capacity here, that have some background in the operation and working with public boards, those kinds of things. I'd like to make the recommendation that we schedule a work session for this Thursday at noon to have a representative from SDAO come up and speak to us on both of those 2 items. So I don't think we need a formal resolution, but before I make those calls more formally, I just wanted to see if the commission would be willing to have that, move forward in that direction, or at least to evaluate the effectiveness of them to do that.
That's a good idea.
I think it's a very safe, solid path forward.
And they're available at that time, or we don't know that yet?
I believe they are. I think Jeff, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, any thoughts, concerns? Yeah?
Well, the only thing I was thinking was, I assume that the permanent search would be they would handle the search similar to what's been done in the past, and for the interim it would be sort of an advisory thing, providing names. It would be less of a...
That's right. So, as I understand it, the decision to install a new GM from any names that they might provide to us would clearly be at the discretion of the board. So we would essentially collectively approve or make approve somebody to assume that role. I think the other part of this is that, as I understand it, and what I would want in here too, is that a search for a GM would involve, again, they would provide a proposal, but ultimately the commission would retain the control over that process. And I think that's an important thing, that we would have an opportunity to work with them and tailor a search that we feel that would satisfy the concerns of the commission and certainly the public as well. So I think the first step is again, in the interest of time, because I don't think any of us want to sit on our hands here too much. I know all the commissioners have been hit with a lot of meetings of late, but again, I think it's important for us to keep this moving forward. So I'd like to suggest again, if everybody can make a Thursday meeting, I'll see if I can make those arrangements and have there. You can make it.
I can be there.
I'll get with Karen to post a meeting announcement for a work session at noon on Thursday, and I'll be sure that SDAO is available to make their presentations to us. Does anybody have any other thoughts? I will point out something that I think is important for us to at least acknowledge, and that is, right now we don't have a formal interim GM. I think, and I'm going to throw my thoughts out, and I want to get everybody else's thoughts on this as well. I think that in the short term here, in the next week or two, that the staff is well situated to deal with and organize the next sort of page of the Port Staff's life, if you will. I think they have the ability to manage their projects right now. I don't think we have a lot of big projects that would require us to make a move to appoint an interim general manager for the next 2 weeks while we hear what SDAO has to say. I think if there are bigger picture issues that Aaron isn't comfortable addressing as the director of operations, that he can bring those to me as the interim president pro tem here on board, and I could certainly bring them further to everybody. If I'm not available, Sarah's available or would be available as well. But that's my feeling right now is I think the port is well suited enough to move forward as it is without appointing an interim GM until we've had a chance to vet some of this through or see what SDO has to say. What does everybody else think?
I think that you, as president, working with Aaron, I think we're in good hands for a couple of weeks. I don't see where we'd have any problems, and if we did, we deal with them. You guys have proven to be pretty tough.
Aaron has. Anybody else? Any other thoughts?
I just say we could, if we need to, we can do a pro tem on Thursday if it doesn't look like they can get someone in here for a couple months. So we always have that option. And I will work with the SDAO to do one of the other hires that I've been involved with, and they did a very good job. And we will be able to do the search and set up the process however we want to do it. And so they bring quite a few staff members with them, and it's a pretty smooth process.
Okay.
But I'll let them talk.
Okay. Good point. Anybody, anything else?
One thing I wanted to point out is that, so when Doug was hired as permanent GM, he took over as a registered agent, as the registered agent for the port for me as the pro temp GM. So if we need a registered agent to sign documents for the port, we don't have, for leases and things like that. It's just something to bear in mind. I don't know if we have anything knocking the door down right now, but it's something to consider. We also don't have somebody who can purchase up to the GM's purchase threshold. But there's nothing that I can't, in that regard, come to you on, I don't think. So I think we're going to be fine. It's just a matter of whether or not you really wanted to pass. You'd have to do the registered agent by resolution. And all you got to do is give me a heads up and make sure it's in a meeting packet whenever you want to do that. But I think we're going to be fine for now.
Great. Thank you for that. All right. I don't think there's any other action here, like I said, other than I'll work with Karen. I'll drop her an email either tonight or tomorrow asking her to set up a work session for Thursday.
One other thing, I know talked to Jim that I haven't done my, I have to get my SDAO training, and we just started doing that. And then things got different, and I know that Jim was there, but I really am looking to SDAO for training for the commission too. Anything that they think we might need to be left up on. But I certainly want some training, and we want to talk to them about that.
Well, when I speak with them, I'll ask them to include that as an agenda
That
item
would be good.
and see what options they have for developing the
So
board.
we were having to travel, we were going to go to Astoria, but then, oh no, we could just do it on, get some DVDs and watch it. So, 2 commissioners could be together and we could get some of that training done, or just any ask them for advice.
Yeah, I'll ask them to include a section on any kind of board training or any kind of
Yeah.
workings like that. Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay. County Supervisor Staff Report. Mark?
So the financial reports for April, or as of April 30th, are in the board packet. We are working to get caught up on our month-end closings, and we're 50% of the way through May. Our goal is to have the May and June financial statements in the next commission packet. Overall, though, April data is useful. Operating revenues increased nearly 8%. Year-to-date operating expenses increased by 2% over the same period in 2017. So we're getting close to the end of June. I looked at where we're going to land with the close of the fiscal year in regard to our budget, and it looks like in every category we're going to be under budget this year. A lot of those bills for June won't come in until July, so it's still a little bit of a guessing game. That when we do some estimates based on last year, it looks like we will be under budget there. Made a note here that Antar has been working for us on a part-time basis, and will be starting next week full-time, so we'll have some more assistance in the finance department. We're particularly working on a large public records request from ILWU, and we'll move forward with that quickly, and then just some other catch-up that we haven't been able to get to in the last 2 months. So, earlier this month, Doug and I met with Todd Kimball of CFO Selections. In the budget that was just adopted, there are funds appropriated to have him work as finance department oversight, similar to a director of finance, 5 days a month for the first 6 months, and then half that time for the final 6 months. I saw in an email today that he even provided Doug a scope of work, but I don't have a copy of that yet. Certainly going into audit season and having been without a director of finance for 8-9 months now, I value Todd's input and oversight of the board's finances. That leads into this fiscal year 2017-18 audit. I've been in contact with Signe Lindstad. We have a tentative schedule to get our financial statements and accounting finished and to the auditors by September 15th of this year. That will give Signe time to do her audit work and hopefully have a draft of the audit report for commission approval by the December 31st deadline. Last fiscal year, we had to get an extension to February, I think particularly with Todd's help. We can set that up and meet the deadline. So, that is my report.
Thanks. Anybody have anything for Mark?
Mark, I just want to make sure that is the 5 days going to be enough, or are you going to need more than the 5 days? I mean, I know we have money budgeted, but do you see any times where you might need more than that?
I believe for the first 6 months we could use more of this time Then in the winter months and next spring, at that point we would have a general manager and a director of finance, and we might not need really as much time then, but I know the fact that we're a little behind, it's been a bit of an unusual year, and we have a little tighter audit schedule this year. I think we could use more of this time up front than just to do 5 days.
Yeah, it seems like front loading that makes a lot more sense now. Do you need, I mean, it's a good suggestion, do you need anything really from the commission on that, or is it simply a collective amount of money that's budgeted that can be used throughout the fiscal year?
That's how it is now. It's a collective amount of money. I believe Todd wants to provide a scope of work that would be signed and approved for that work. I just don't see that yet.
So would that be more formally adopting a schedule?
It would.
That, and since that money, I guess what I would say is that even though we've appropriated that money, I mean, I think it would be still good to keep the board informed on what that schedule is going to be like, especially at this point until we decide how we're going to handle the CFO position within the port. If you could just keep the commission, or I'd like to suggest you just keep the commission when you and Todd settle out on something, so we have a general idea of how much he's going to be around. But I think I'm certainly very much in favor of having him assist the port, certainly in the next few months when we get things settled down.
That's great.
Would there be any way that you could, I mean, it came up that, do you need a CFO, or can you have a consultant like this jump in and help our big team that we already have? Is there any way after things settle down that you could kind of estimate what those differences would be? Or it's just been too crazy of a year?
I'm in favor of a director of finance, somebody who's there overseeing the day-to-day operations. We've got 4 of us in the finance team that, all 4 of us will have questions from time to time. I think my strengths are accounting, so if we get into business development, human resources issues, that's a little bit outside of my expertise. I like to be buried in the numbers versus looking at the bigger picture. So I think there'd be a good balance to have both of those types of people, somebody focused on details and somebody watching the big picture and looking forward with development and planning. It just seems to me to make sense to have somebody nearby. Things come up all the time that you have to move forward on. That's my thought.
Would we anticipate that position being able to work towards small grants or large grants and to fill that niche? I think that's really important for us going forward.
Yeah, grants and HR is what we're very much lacking right now.
And I think that's what happens too if we got in a position where we had to do loans or grants. There's grant management, grant reporting.
Grants are far from free. It's a lot of time to keep up with them.
Right.
Whatever happened to the BCCI search for a CFO?
So what's that?
The BCCI search for the CFO that we have going.
A BBSI?
BBS.
They
I
didn't-
know it was something like that.
Yeah, they didn't turn up anybody, and it was on a commission type basis. So
Right,
if they
right.
found somebody, then we pay them. But they were pretty slow to respond. I do have another company who has found CFOs for other ports, and I believe they're out of Texas. They contacted me a couple months, probably right around the time Doug came on board, and I said, I passed it off, but I'll share that information with you guys because they seem fairly credible. They found CFOs for other ports, and that's what he specialized in. So,
And that's something where we could set parameters that we need, grant writing, HR, CFO.
Well, we would
Is that
define it as
traditional?
positions.
Right. Yeah. So we would do that and then give it to a search group.
yeah, that's exactly right.
I think we'll have more discussions going forward about how we're going to handle the CFO position, but appreciate your input on that, Mark. and the options, Aaron, which sound like they'd be pretty good if we decide to go that direction.
Yeah, I think so. We at least have a couple of different choices. One of the other things that Mark and I have talked about a lot is an additional benefit to a permanent director of finance is that you have somebody who's a little bit removed from creating the ideas for new ventures and things like that, because sometimes what happens is you get really, you really like your new idea, and so you start to view the numbers through colored lenses. And it's really helpful in a management arena to have somebody else there that can look at it with a little bit more of a cold look and say, yeah, this thing doesn't cut it. I don't care how much you want to do something. And I think it's something we can really benefit from.
Good point.
Fair enough. All right. Aaron, do you want to take over on the next couple reports?
Sure. I just wanted to mention, overall, as far as I want to make sure, and field any concerns that you might have on where we're at as far as personnel and the ability to respond to the needs of the port. I think we're in a good place. Please correct me if I'm wrong, either Becca or Mark, if I say anything out of turn, but we're able to get done what needs to get done to keep the port moving ahead for as long as you need while you find the next go around. We're happy to be here and do whatever needs to get done. I've got my report here in front of me. There's one thing I did want to mention is we did remove another broken piling on Port Dock 7. So that one is gone. It was on 7E, I believe. So the Pleasure Craft Mariner over here in South Beach has been somewhat of an issue for a while for us. And what happens is a lot of times you get a boat in there. This particular one I think is probably a late 70s era, maybe early 80s era cabin cruiser with inboard diesels. And once it gets stuck to the dock for a long time and it's no longer an operational boat, it gets into a certain market and you wind up with the same type of problems that it'll get sold from one person to another. And that's what we wound up with on Mariner 3. We had a lot of conduct issues with the owners of it, and they fell behind their moorage. They were incarcerated for a short time period. We had just started talking about being able to seize the vessel, and one of the spouse of the owner came out and decided to take it out and put it up against South Jetty. So the Coast Guard grabbed it, asked us what we wanted to do with it, and I said it would be best if it didn't come back into the marina. As a matter of fact, if it sunk, it would probably be better for the port, because then you can just, use the Superfund to contract the thing and get it out of there. But they brought it back to us. So we got it. They did crack the Superfund to get Northwest firefighters out here to boom it and pump the fuel off of it. But then at that point in time, we got residual pollution that's in the bilges, and it had holes in the hull because she put it on a jetty. So in order to keep it afloat, you have to constantly circulate what's in the bilges back into the bay. So I just said, look, we need to get rid of the thing, and had it towed up to Port of Toledo. We're in the seizure process for it right now. And that's where the boat's at. So it's going to become ours, and it's going to cost us some money to dispose of it. So I talked to the Marine Safety Unit up in Portland, the Coast Guard Marine Safety Unit up in Portland, and they said that, I talked to them for a while about it. They said we probably have a good case to go back to the National Pollution Control Center, or the Pollution Fund, which is the people that control the Superfund, and make a claim, and we might be able to get some money back from them on it. So I took a bunch of pictures of the oil bilges, and I'm going to put that together with some forms, send it back to them, see if we can get reimbursed for some of that at least.
What kind of dollars and cents are we talking about?
What's that?
What kind of dollars and cents are we talking about?
So to get it up there, it cost us. It was $250. It was $200 an hour, 2.5 hours. So $500 to get it up there. And then it was. It's about $500 a month for dry moorage up there. It's going to be about $3,500 to give it a backhoe paint job. And then it's going to be probably then legal fees, and then of course we definitely took track of all of our labor involved trying to keep the thing afloat. There was we got a diver to put a glass patch on the keel so it would stop taking on water so quickly. Overall, I'd say the whole thing's probably, then we got back moorage involved in it too, and that's, what do you know what that is, just roughly?
Near 1,500.
So I'd say it's someplace in the neighborhood of like $10,000 to $12,000, something like that. But, you got, and it's not derelict. It's not quite there. The owners have absconded. I don't know where they're at, but I know who owns it. And we've got some contact information. I don't know that we're going to hear from him again, but, it's kind of an in-between. I still got to do more work to figure out if I can call it derelict. What point can I call it derelict? So, but anyway.
Okay.
Done a bunch of work with, trying to get, like I said, the two main outpour tuna, associations, just to basically do a bit of marketing work to let them know that we're out there and able to get people offloaded. I put a flyer out, the Western Fish Boat Owners Association newsletter a few weeks ago, and it showed up this month. AFA hasn't got in contact with us, so I still haven't called them back again to try and get them to come out. But they have called us back, and mainly what I'm trying to avoid a situation where they all of a sudden show up and say, "Haha, here we are, and we need something done right now." Because I think their impression of the port from years past was that it was congested and not so easy to get offloaded. So I'm trying to head that off the past, but that's that situation. I hadn't heard back from them. They did a bunch trying to help out with the Grays Harbor Historical Seaport thing. I spent a lot of time running through, trying to give them as much information about the moorings as possible, and went around that barrel lots. We got a beautification award from the Chamber of Commerce for the South Beach RV Park, and a lot of that's due to our employee Eric Swanson's hard work, and he did a great job. He's gone to the Master Gardener course, and a lot of what you see here is due to his knowledge of how to make a landscape look really nice. So, but it's the whole crew, really. It's everybody pitching in. So, squid fires are off. I already mentioned that, and that's about all I have. Everything else is in the report there as far as hours go. And that's about all I got.
Great. You want to take a crack at the next one?
Sure.
You don't have to get too far into it. If there's any highlights you want us to be aware of, we can read the rest.
Just run through it real quick here.
Not sure if we need too much.
Just if you see anything you want to call to our attention, otherwise, I think we can.
Give me a second here.
Sure enough.
Yeah, regarding that, so I did, like I said, I sat down with Bob Eder and Judd to work out the agenda for the next Commercial Fishing User Group meeting. This kind of reminds me, so, in the past, that's generally been the general manager that has worked with that committee. I'm not currently the general manager. Do you want me to take up scheduling for the next, it seems like that's what we need to do, is we need to figure out when this next meeting is going to be, so that we can get something back to the commission in time.
Mm-hmm.
So I can very easily do that.
That's all right with everybody here.
I think I read in the resolution, it actually was the harbor master that does the, but I prefer, you and Kent, whichever.
Yeah. Either way, I just want to make sure it's going to be all right if we get that going. So
I think it would be appreciated.
All right.
Hey, Aaron, I had one on number 26.
Yeah.
That's something that I know that we need to be continuing to look at. David Olbrecht is a good contact, and maybe have him available for Mark to ask questions also.
Yeah, definitely. I was already in contact with him previously too. So, yeah, he is a good help. So, we're definitely free to call him whenever we need. I don't have too much else. Let's see. Everything's in there.
All right. That sounds good. We have next item on the agenda is any commissioner reports. Jim, can you update us on your?
That is better than yesterday.
Yes.
I wasn't commissioner yesterday, but interesting meeting.
All right. Jeff?
Yeah, I'm the liaison for the city parking study committee, and they had a meeting today, and basically where they're at is, let's see if they got a little, where they're at on the timeline, and they're right here. They are trying to get to the point where they're making their final recommendations. The consultant Lancaster is finished with their study. It's presented, and basically it's up to the advisory committee, to the city council, to make their recommendations, and for the city to decide what they're going to do, and tentatively scheduled for round one implementation October to December this year. Prepare and issue RFP for me to roll out. Implementation round two, winter, spring 2019. But there's still discussions on the advisory committee as to what really the details of what they want to do. So they're gonna have another meeting in late August, try to come up at some point real soon here with their recommendations. The only thing that really seemed to come up from the port standpoint is it was discussed at one time, the idea would, if there were permits on the bayfront, particularly it would be the east end, would a permit that a fisherman bought be used either there or the fisherman's parking lot, and that was abandoned when the fees were going to be changing, and they said, well, with different fees and whatever fee structure, we couldn't do that, and so that idea had been abandoned for a while. Other than that, just lots of discussion on down into the details of what about residents and what about charter vessels. They may need day passes or different ideas. So just lots of different ideas and details still being bantered about. So that's probably longer than needed, but that's my report.
So let me say from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for being on the park. Walter, do you have any updates?
No updates.
Sarah?
I had a fisherman come and talk to me today about parking. And his suggestion that he's sick of walking from God off far away, and it looks like he was a little overweight, and I was going to say something that maybe was good for him, but I didn't. But anyway, his suggestion is to clear out more of the east end where the ops building is and the outriggers and such that are there. That I know Kent has told us that that's there for safety for the crew because people go bombing through there. But his thing was the Lincoln County Historical Society lot, which he said were 17 if everybody parked correctly. That should be more of a 4-8 hour thing, not long term, and then clear out some more stuff on the west end of the Port Dock 7 area by the ops building so that more fishermen could park there, which is a lot closer than parking up past England Marine or by England Marine. So just that was that person's iteration of what should be done.
Fair enough.
But I agree, and I know staff thought that you could get more parking over on the west end of the Port Dock 7 lot by moving some of the gear.
All right. I don't necessarily have a big update, but I did want to let people know that I have been in touch with the head of the Grays Harbor Historical Society in a somewhat casual sense to at least begin a dialogue again about whether or not, or the practicality of how we can balance the needs of the Newport community here and the users of the tall ships as well. So it's a very preliminary kind of thing, but I think even though the decision that we made earlier was, I think, rooted in what we felt was the best interest of the users of the port, I think we also realized that none of us wanted to remove the tall ships exclusively from the port indefinitely. So we haven't set up anything. We're going to catch up most likely sometime in mid-July, just casually to at least begin a dialogue again. So just thought I'd mention that.
Good.
All right. Coming to the tail end here. Calendar for future considerations. You can see them there. The eelgrass monitoring survey, Independence Day, the port office is closed, celebration run, barrel to keg relay, regular commission meetings for July 24th and August 28th. At this point, we'll have one more opportunity for anybody, public comment. Anyone have a desire to make a public comment, state your name and hold it. You got one behind you, David. Dietmar?
So my name is Dietmar Wohl. I've been going to these commission meetings for a long time, and I was here yesterday when you guys decided to do what you did. Mm-hmm. It's nice to see civil discussion here in the room. You guys are kind of getting along. You're looking at each other now. I think it's kind of nice to see that, and I think the port is such a big part of this community that I'm hoping that this process will lend itself to being a very productive commission now that you guys can get some business done. So anyway, it's all good, I think, and I can see some positive things happening here tonight. That's my comment.
Thank you.
David?
Yeah, Jake's quick comment on the repo vessel, derelict vessel. Port staff has a port track record with the Port Toledo Boat Yard. Please stay on top of it.
Yep.
Thank you.
I got written quotes already. Yeah. But I guarantee you, we ain't gonna pay them if they overcharge us, and that's the way it's gonna be.
Right.
There you go.
Maybe we can get milk and CTs.
Can't you just spin and let Bud have it?
All right. Here we go. Anybody have any other public comments before we adjourn the meeting? Nothing heard. 7:23. I'll adjourn the meeting of the Board of Commissioners for Newport.